What one piece of career advice do you wish someone had given you when you started out?
A great question, Drew. And I think the first one for me is about being impatient for change and that being okay. And I say that because I think not a lot of good things happen in life without leadership, whether that's people in formal positions or just people stepping up to perform acts of leadership. And we need people with energy and enthusiasm to do them and the desire to make things better. But on the flip side, I wish I'd realised that I also needed to learn how to be patient with my impatience. So I reflect back now on when I first started in the NHS, and at the time it was in quite a difficult place. I'd been working in the music industry. I started life as a guitar repairer. I'd got to the pinnacle of my career. I'd led the largest independent workshop in Europe, and I'd developed chronic tendonitis, so I had to give up the job that I absolutely loved doing, and I really didn't know what to do with myself. Having left school at 16 to become an apprentice, I didn't have any qualifications. Most people didn't recognise there were lots of transferable skills from running a small business, and thankfully the NHS was one of the few places that still gave jobs to people who had nothing on paper. But I was really frustrated by it. I just spent my whole time challenging sort of process. Why do we do this round here? Why does no one seem to want to make things better? And while in my first few years I managed to improve quite a lot, I felt a lot of the time like I was fighting a bit of a losing battle. And I think if I'd behaved slightly differently, if I'd been a bit more patient about what I was trying to do, I think I would have irritated less people and probably got further more quickly than feeling like I was fighting them. And then I think the very last bit, and this is not something so much that I wish I had as advice myself, but it is advice I give to my kids now, is to be motivated by something more interesting and purposeful than either money or fame. And I say this because having worked with bands as they were going sort of up the trajectory, getting loads of fame and fortune, and also working with bands when they were sort of crashing down, at the other end of the spectrum, I realised that those that really, coped in that sort of industry were those that were motivated by their art and not by pursuing fame and fortune, because it's never enough and it comes and goes quickly. And so something that I've always been quite lucky with is that all the jobs I've ever done, there's always been an impact of that. I've always been able to see the impact of that, and that's been motivating. And that, whenever you reflect back then, no one can ever take the impact of what you've done away from you. So I think that for me is really important.
Share a pivotal moment in your career that you feel made a significant impact.
I fear I'm going to be a little boring and be part of all of the leaders, probably of the next 10 to 20 years who say when COVID hit, it was a pivotal moment for us as leaders. At the time, I was leading the charity I lead now, a leading staff college. And the work that we do, we were running experiential leadership programs. So we would bring together small groups of leaders from health and social care to do lots of different exercises where they would get an opportunity to lead others, would hold the mirror up to them to help them develop their awareness of the impact that they were having on others and the influence they're having, and so that they can learn how to better use their energies. And I guess when COVID hit, there were 4 things we knew. One was we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't bring people together. And we definitely couldn't bring health service leaders together because there was no way they could come out of the NHS at that point. We didn't know what we were up against. So there was talk of a 3-week lockdown right at the beginning, and then the world would return to normal. We suspected that wasn't going to be the way of it. But we didn't know how long for a period we wouldn't be able to deliver our mission and what we were doing. We also knew, as a small organisation that lived fairly hand to mouth, we didn't have endless reserves, so there was a limited amount of time we could coast for. And I guess most importantly for us, we knew what we did mattered, and we knew it'd be important in the moment of the pandemic, but even more important perhaps was how we could support leaders when they were coming out of the pandemic, where that need to recover and rescue their services would require huge amounts of leadership. And I suppose that gave us the mission and the purpose to continue and say we still need to exist at the end of this, because what we do is really important and is part of how the world will move on. But obviously we had a major problem because we knew that we just didn't have the cash reserves to keep us going for an indefinite amount of time. So I started with a sort of, how do we hibernate our organisation? What do we need to still be together at the end of however long this period is, so that we can bring it out of hibernation and go back to doing the good work we were doing? And we felt there were 3 really key bits. One was our brand. We still needed to exist and people to be able to find us. We still needed enough of our corporate knowledge about how we do things, how we, our methodology for how we develop leaders. But most crucially, we needed the expertise and the talent of our faculty. These were the people who'd spent 10, 20 years developing their practice in this and had taken years of training and development. So we didn't want to lose the talent that we had within our team. And then the last bit was everyone was very adamant that we needed our leader, which was myself, in order to hold all of that together. But that was the key problem. When we looked at it and we thought about how much time we had, when we needed to make key decisions, how long we could keep cash going for, it was very, very clear we couldn't keep our leader, not employed anyway. So I made a really crucial decision, which was, whatever happened, I would still lead the organisation. I had to persuade the board to make me redundant and to make our staff redundant, but that I would, in a voluntary way, still lead the organisation. And I said, if and as and when the world becomes an easier place to live in, and the time is right, you can always bring me back. But if we've lost everything in between, we won't be able to do that. It strangely wasn't that hard a decision to make, partly because I was really committed to the mission and what we were trying to do. It was really difficult to persuade the board that this was something to do. There were people who thought I'd gone mad and thought, why are you trying to do this? There are people who thought, I just don't want to have to make this as a decision and turn our back on you at a moment when it felt like the world was falling apart. And there were some who just felt a little bit in awe. Who were like, wow, this is an amazing act of leadership. But the team themselves were all absolutely galvanised behind that. And I guess having made those decisions quite early on, and never quite given up, we kept our sort of eyes open to opportunities. What ended up happening is literally, I think about a week before all of our staff were due to be redundant, Trust started to come to us saying, can you try and do something for us virtually? We've got all these leaders taking on huge leadership challenges in a way they've not done before. Can you please work with them virtually? And we thought, well, we don't know. We could try, we'll give it a go, but we really don't know because we've never done it before. And suddenly we found ourselves actually having work at a time when we thought we couldn't do anything. But because we'd made decisions early, we were able to then flex. We ended up not making anyone redundant. And I suppose something that I'm quite proud of now is we've still got all of the team who were involved back then are still with us now. And we've been expanding pretty much ever since the last of the lockdown. So I guess that's a really pivotal moment for me as a leader. And probably one of those moments that I'll always be really, really quite proud of.
How do you approach the challenges and setbacks in your professional life, and what's your go-to strategy to overcome them?
I think, Drew, as you get more senior as leaders, I think the complexity of the sort of problems that we're facing and the challenges increase. The number of people that are relying on us increases, and the sort of the uncertainty and the ambiguity around what decisions you make, the impact they might have, all increases. So there's something about how we develop our own resilience to cope with the scale of those challenges. And I think that's personal. I think it's different to all of us. So it's been really nice just to have a bit of time to reflect myself on how I think I've managed to develop my resilience over the years. And I don't think there's any one thing, but I think there's a mixture of about 5. One is sort of staying in tune with myself and being aware of how I am when my energy levels are beginning to dip, and sometimes I'm not saying I'm very good at this, but trying to make decisions about maybe I need to just step back from doing that because I'm really sort of, I've run out of steam this week and I'm likely to, say the wrong thing in a difficult moment if I don't recognise that. I think For me, and this again varies person to person, I find there's quite a freedom in terms of the complexity of the ask. When there's no answers to most of the challenges we have, and we can only try things, we can experiment and see what happens. There's something quite nice in that. When you're expected as an expert, and I suppose earlier in my career I was expected to be the expert who always knew the answer to things. I think that has its own stress. I think when there isn't an answer or we've never done something before, that feels quite freeing. I think one of the biggest bits for me, and is particularly acute at the moment, is recognising I've got a lot of influence. So when there's a setback, when perhaps an organisation we're working with decides we're no longer going to fund the development of leaders because there's no cash on the public sector, I can be frustrated by it. I can think this is really sort of short-term thinking, but then I think, well, if that's just not going to work, that's just not the time. Where can I use my influence to still do some good work elsewhere? And I guess there's something about having the flexibility and the ability to just keep picking yourself up and go, okay, we can't do that, but that doesn't mean we can't do anything good anymore. On that, I think it's just been important to me in terms of thinking about my own influence and my own autonomy to do that. The other bit, we talk a lot in my own organisation about having support and challenge and needing both. I'm someone who I like being able to talk to people about issues. I like being able to explore them with people and seek as many different opinions and different approaches to things as I can do. I'm not necessarily someone that wants someone to put their arm around me and go, oh, everything's brilliant, you're trying really hard. I like people who are going to go, oh, Charlie, you seem to have made an assumption that you can't do this. Why is that then? And challenge my own thinking. And then I think that the last bit is around your relationships. So for me, time with my close family, even the kids, that sort of ground you and bring you back when things are sometimes quite tricky. The quality of relationships within my own team. Often, even when things are really difficult, you can go to them and rely on them and share some of those issues and help them. They often help me to think about things in a slightly different way and are very supportive. So support goes both ways in the organisation. And then sort of allies, as I was saying, I try and find, I've got quite a big professional network of people who come from very different professional backgrounds and who just see things differently. So they sometimes just open your eyes in different ways. And perhaps late to the party, I've just over the last 6 months, I've got a formal mentor for the first time. And I've had lots of informal ones, but particularly for the moment while we're trying to grow an organisation, I wanted someone who'd sort of been there and done it, whereas just a bit ahead of me in terms of that. And I found that really helpful, just to have some sort of protected time to think about whatever the challenges might be and to talk about them in a safe place. So I think no one thing, but it's just sort of being aware of going, I seem to be a bit more stressed, a little bit more tetchy than I might be, or when I'm on a really good day, maybe I need to be putting a bit more energy into some of those things that I know help to keep me sort of on a steady path.